Is this thing on? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tigers Tonight. Feels like it's been months since we've done this, fellas. I am John Maddox, joined as always by the best co-host in all the land. We will start in the land of the Spectrum upgrades with our friend Brian Moss. Brian, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty good. As long as Spectrum is done with their upgrades, I'll be live here. But if they're not done, then you'll see me bounce out.
Upgrades, the key word.
Yes.
And from the palatial Marley Manor here in beautiful, scenic, crime-free Hernando, Mississippi, the one and only master of pain himself, Larry Marley. Larry, how are you, sir?
I am well. And, we've talked about this every year that the longest off season for any sports is college football, right? And, you and I've also talked about this. After the 4th of July, we start to think about, okay, here we go. So I've been thinking about this for a month now, and I can only tell you that we have 3 weekends left until we have college football. And every year, guys, every year I say this, every year I'm excited, and I cannot believe that I'm more excited this year even than I was last year.
Yeah, it is hard to believe how long it's been. The time does not fly. The time seems to drag on by. And if we have any technical glitches tonight, forgive me. I am running an entirely new system this year. But thanks for joining us here. This is sort of a special edition. We're not going to have a show next week, but then the week after next, we will have our season preview show. And then, like Larry said, it is game week. But I wanted to come in, and Sam was going to join us tonight, but he could not. I want to talk about, first of all, the article that Sam wrote for us, last week, I believe it was, or probably 2 weweeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, because last week was the media day, was it not?
Time is nothing but a construct. So, just my internal. Interesting. So, Jeb, does that mean you can hear me or not hear me? That is very interesting that he can't. He says my microphone is not on, just my internal. Well, let me play around with the settings for just a second. So, Brian, if you'll go into a little bit more detail about Sam's article and what even you uncovered as part of that.
Yeah, it was, last year, right after the loss to UTSA, we got some rumors. Sam heard that, a former player may have leaked the defensive playbook or something to that effect, but all we had was rumors. So, Sam kept digging around, just couldn't find anything concrete. So he kind of shelved it, for a while. And then, about a month ago, I want to say, he was like, you know what, I had this on the back burner. Let's see if we can find something. We started digging around. We started asking around, and lo and behold, we got some people willing to talk. Obviously not on record, but reliable sources. Some who knew of it secondhand. Still not good enough. We needed something that was firsthand. But we had enough to for Sam to write that article. 2 weeks ago, a week before the American Media Day. That's when he posted it. Still looking for that smoking gun, concrete evidence. But we did, like I said, we had enough to put an initial article out of what we've heard, because we've talked to former players, coaches, people that knew of the situation. And then when the initial article came out, there was a lot of people that kind of pushed it aside, said it was false. So what that kind of made Sam mad, which I understand. It made some of the sources that he and I had spoken to a little upset that, hey, this is not false. This actually happened. So Sam was given the the picture of the DMs, and since we had that, we actually got that. I want to say, if it was not the night before the media day, it was the night before that. And Sam was on his way down. I think he was in Florida on a religious retreat. Doing something with his church, I believe. So we had that smoking gun. Sam did the article. We made it free so that people could see it, and it blew up, and rightfully so. And a lot of people were saying it was clickbait. Shout out to Commissioner Bernetti. Uh, me and him go round and round, whether it's Taylor ham or pork roll. Shout out this pork roll. But anyway, that's a Jersey thing. Most people won't understand that. But it wasn't clickbait. It wasn't sensationalized. For me, something that would be clickbait is shock and awe and doesn't have a bit of truth to it. This had everything about it was true, and we didn't sensationalize it. Sam didn't give an opinion on it. I didn't give an opinion on it. It was just here are the facts. This is what happened, and it's for the world to see. So, and come to find out, just from talking to more sources, that because I was asked, at the media day, if if the coaches knew about it, the Memphis coaches knew about it, how come they didn't change their defensive play calling prior to that game? I'm like, well, that should tell you your answer that they didn't know, because anyone in their right mind would know that they would change their play calling prior to that game. But I was told that the Memphis staff and players did not know about the incident until after the game. Maybe the person who sent those DMs started running their mouth, and then word got around, and here we are.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there, and I have thoughts about this. So, number one, I don't
And
know a scenario.
let me chime in real quick. Sorry about that, but Jeb asked the question: was he still on the roster when it happened? From our understanding, he was not on the roster when it happened. This is after he was kicked off the team, let go, whatever the case may be. But I was specifically told the DMs happened after he was off the team. But if you look at those DMs down at the bottom, it kind of mentions what let me know if you get cut off. And to me, that kind of sounds like, I know there's two ways to take that. It sounds like, well, if you get cut off, you have you have something here that implies he's still on the team. But I was told no, he was not on the team. And to me, the cut off is if you get cut from, I think it's your scholarship or whatever, you can't get into a new place. I'll put a good word for you here at UTSA. But that's what we were told. Whether you believe that or not, it's up to you guys. But we were told he was off the team.
So Jeb is already, we're 1 week in and stealing my thunder here. So yeah, I agree with Jeb here. If that's the case, again, this part we are kind of speculating about.
Yes.
If that's the case, then why does he still have that playbook in his hands? Why does he still have access to that? Did he get it from some? You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think it just, again, speculation on my part.
Yeah.
I don't think he had access to it. When he said, I think he premeditated. I think he took a picture of it, knowing that he's lost his starter job. He's, Cortland Marsh, beat him out. So I think he had this planned in his mind already. So he took a picture while he had it. But who in their right mind, in this day and age with everyone transferring left and right, you don't think that, hey, my former player is gonna do this. Has it happened in the past? I'm sure it has, but I don't know. I guess because of this happening, coaches will now have to think about changing stuff up when someone is dismissed from the team or if someone transfers. But how often? I mean, how many times are you going to change because transfers happen left and right?
Yeah, so back to my kind of thoughts on this whole thing. Number one, my first gut instinct is you will never convince me in a million years that at least, and I don't know his name, and I'm not here to besmirch or libel any or slander anybody, but how in the world does either the offensive coordinator or the head coach not know about this, because they're not going to turn a guy loose who has a 53%, I think I looked at it, completion percentage coming into the Memphis game. Now, I think he had thrown for 200 yards one time, and he threw for 306 against Memphis. And Larry, you said it before we came on here. He was very, very efficient. That's the big takeaway for me, is how efficient he was in that game. Not just the yardage, but the touchdowns. You said it, he didn't throw an incomplete pass in the third quarter. And those DMs were pretty explicit. And, some of it was probably a little bit petty because Cortland Marsh did win the job over him. But then Cortland was also hurt in that game. And, frankly, that's what he said. When they go cover zero, you got to take advantage of him because he can't cover anybody. So, that's my first thought. And second thought is, I have a friend around the Michigan program, and they're like, thank you, Taj, for taking some of the heat off the Michigan program with all this. But Larry, I want to come to you because, piggybacking a little bit off Bryan, how often do you think this happens across the board in college football?
How often does somebody provide a scouting report on another team? All the time. How often do they provide explicit play calls and audibles? Very rarely. You would not do that. That's what makes this story so explicit. You have to understand that there is a code, and he broke a lot of those codes here. And if you're another team looking at this, I mean, you've got to be very leery of this guy, right? Coming onto your team. If I were his teammate, I don't remember where he went. Where did he end up at, guys? I don't remember. Purdue. So he's at Purdue, and you're his teammate, and you know what he's already done. Guys, I'd be like really leery about how do you trust him as a teammate? People make mistakes, but this is a big line crosser. You just don't do that. It's one thing to share a scouting report. That's totally fine. If he come in and go, hey, that guy, zero, he can't cover anybody. Like you when you get him out there, you should look him up. Like, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. When you start getting into, hey, when they do this and you hear this call, then that's what they're going to do. That's really crossing the line. Like, that is a huge no-no. And so you're essentially at that point, you're basically telling their quarterback, okay, this is the look you're going to get, but that's not what it is. And let's go back to the game real fast. So Memphis, we all know Memphis was up 24-14 in the second quarter with 8 minutes to go. UTSA scored 6 straight possessions, and it was 44-24. And the game is essentially over at that point. In the third quarter, I went back and watched it. In the third quarter, they outscored Memphis 10-0. And then they went on and scored 10 more points in the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, McCown did not throw a single incompletion. He did not throw an incompletion. He had one batted down by Memphis, but he did not throw an incompletion at all. Guys, if you go back and look at Memphis the next week we play Rice, okay? We held them like their quarterback, whatever. My point here is Memphis in that game, for whatever reason, at the time, we didn't know. For whatever reason, McCown in that quarter just became something he wasn't the rest of the year.
Right.
And my initial thoughts were, I don't want to take anything away from this kid having a good game. But after I watched it again, Sam can tell it best, but go back and watch the tape. He doesn't even. We've got a disguised blitz on the right side. He doesn't even look to the left. He looks straight to the right and throws right where the blitz man had come from. You can't get that lucky that often. Like, it just doesn't happen.
No check downs, nothing. Just you go back in that play, especially you're talking about, that's the tight end that comes off the line and is untouched because we're blitzing from that side, right? Which is
that exact spot. That's
the
spot we're blitzing, and it's a disguised blitz. I don't know, guys.
Well, and then I know that post game or at media day, Bryan, you asked about it, and nobody had any clue it was happening. Commissioner Pernetti is too busy redesigning Eddie the Eagle there to change the image of the conference and change the name to just the American, whatever. That's later time. But, I go back and I watch and I think about, were the Memphis coaches kind of clued in on that? Did they kind of figure it out? And did that cause the offensive Orion to kind of panic a little bit when he went for those 2 4th and shorts from midfield? Because, you look back and you're like, oh, well, those weren't very smart calls. But you look at it now and you go, well, maybe they figured it out and we're just trying to do everything. They knew at that point that this was going to be a shootout, and they just felt like they had to score every single possession, and you don't get those 2 4th downs. And now you're in a world of hurt because you're falling behind, and I'm not saying they
can't stop them. You can't stop them. They literally look unstoppable for about a quarter or 2 quarters. And it's to the point where everything you do defensively, they're immediately countering, and you're like, what? Because all right, so it's okay if you get out of position a time or two, but there was one play, and I started to tell you about this one. I went back and rewatched. There's one play in the third quarter. It's 2nd and 7. We've got outside leverage on their guy, on their Z, which is the one on the left side, and it's clear that it looks like we have umbrella coverage, which is zone, but we come out of that and go into man, and we bring up a safety, and he's going to, I don't know if it was delayed blitz or whatever, but they didn't even check up. They went straight right down where the safety was. And you would have never done that if that was umbrella coverage. He would have been completely covered. He had been double covered. It blew my mind. I said, wait a minute. That's when I started to go, okay, I think Sam's got something here, because that guy steps up, right before the snap, and their wide receiver didn't do anything but go straight right where he was. And there's no way you'd have done that unless you knew that that's what he was going to do. There's no way. He would have been running a slant or something underneath if you think it's umbrella. Guys, look, I don't want to get too technical here, but do go back. If you are interested, just take an hour, go back and watch the game, especially the second, third quarter. Well, but seeing how we see it now, it's a whole different. You see it totally different. But anyway, that's my rant.
Another piece of this, you're talking about, did they just watch a lot of film and know what was coming? And Bryan, I thought it was interesting on Friday when Jordan Hankins met with the media, and I asked him, I said, what is one thing that you've learned from your first year as a defensive coordinator? And he said consistency. He said, when we started last year, our playbook was about 200 pages. And by the end of the season, it was close to 500. And he said that was too much. He said, we've got to get back to what we do. And now, as I think through that makes what the implication of, oh, well, they just watched a lot of film and that's how they knew what was coming and so on and so forth. Bryan, that makes it even more damning. And again, I'm not saying that the coaches were in on this for UTSA and that, but I don't see how you don't know. And I don't see how this doesn't, you can't stand there and say it didn't happen, which is what they said at first, and then say, well, it didn't have any impact on the game. Well, it clearly, Bryan, had impact on the game.
Yeah, it did. And, to me, it's one of the big what ifs. What if Blankenship didn't get hurt? It may not have mattered that they had the playbook because Memphis really, had the upper hand. But once he went down, it was just a whole different ball game. So yes, they had the playbook, but yeah, man, that Blankenship injury just really, really hurt.
Here's the thing, Bryan. Here's what changed it, because here's what Blankenship did change. So you got a 10-point lead, but they're still in the game.
Yeah.
If you get them down 17 or 20, all of a sudden now it doesn't matter that they know your playbook because you become predictable, right? To a degree, it still matters, but
yeah,
but they're more predictable. My point here is that what the Blankenship thing did was it opened up the opportunity for them to seize momentum. Once they got the momentum, having the playbook meant everything.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's the kind of the thing here is it was almost like this perfect storm of, but maybe there is a possibility, I guess, in some world where the coaches didn't know. I feel like I'm grasping a little bit here, but maybe there is a scenario where the coaches didn't know and, McCown talked them into these checks or whatever. And again, I'm not here to slander anybody because it is what it is. It's water under the bridge. But maybe that scenario is factual and maybe they didn't know. But guys, this just feels like something that somebody has to get suspended over, right? Like somebody has to be in trouble here. I'm not sure who that is. I don't understand if you're Purdue why Taj is still on your roster, because if he, it's one of those things, your X is an X for a reason. If he's done it here, what's to say he's not going to do it there? But somebody's got to get in trouble for this, right? Like this is not indefensible. You can't just go, well, yep, what happened. And the thing I think that is probably the most mind-boggling or the most maddening about this is Memphis wins that game and wins out. What if Boise State slips up? You never know, because now the pressure is really on them to win out. So what if they slip up? Memphis is probably in the playoff. So this was, somebody called it the other day, $1 million game. Well, it was actually more than that. It cost Memphis a lot of money had things played out like they possibly could have. Look, if Memphis and Boise State end the season with the same record, Boise State's going to the playoff. There's no question in my mind. They had the best player in the country, the second best player in the country. So they're going to the playoff, which is fine. But, this was the first time since the Navy game, Memphis was totally outmanned, totally caught off guard. I gave Brian Newberry and his staff a lot of credit after that game because they were not Navy. Like they came at us and threw things at us that we were not ready for. And Coach Silverfield will tell you that happens. Coach Hankins, Coach Ramsey, that happens time to time. You're going to get caught off guard by an entire game plan. We're used to Navy running that little triple option. We'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks. We're used to that little triple option, but that was not Navy. That wasn't your grandfather's Navy. That was innovative. And honestly, as much as it pains me, that was pretty fun to watch how they completely changed who they were. But you move to the UTSA game, you move to that Larry Wright, you move to that third quarter. That's really only the second time in a season that Memphis looked outgunned and outmanned. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. And again, I'm trying to kind of tiptoe a line here because I don't know who knew what, but I just have to think that somebody maybe on the Memphis coaching staff went, hey, there's something weird. Like they may not have known. I don't know that anybody other than the parties involved knew exactly what this was. But I think everybody kind of figured something out along the way and said, you know what, this just isn't right. There's something weird here. So we need to, we've got to press. And Larry, I think that's what happened in the second half. Blankham C with a silly injury on a celebration. And now Memphis is really pressing because they feel it slipping away. And when you play not to lose, what do you typically do? Or not? Yeah, you lose.
Right. I mean, here's the point, and I'm not going to belabor this too much, other than just to say that in the course of the season, I doubt anybody at Memphis had any staff, or they didn't have time to. It was after the season, and probably in defragging everything. At some point, somebody watched the film and went, "Wait a minute," and so what you'll do is you'll watch a kid and you'll see tendencies, especially from a quarterback. I did this for 4 years. I can tell you, you would watch tape and you see what is a quarterback's tendencies. What does he do when you blitz from the right? What does he do when you blitz from the left? What does he do? Like, all these are things that you look at, and when you're coming up with a game plan, that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to say, okay, if I blitz from the right side, he doesn't respond well, and he can't throw on the run to the left, right? If he's running to the left, he doesn't throw as well. So we're gonna do that. These are all things that were part of the game plan, okay? And so when the offense stalls, the defense says, okay, we need to get a stop, and he's doing everything that he hasn't been doing and doesn't do later. At the end of the year, right? You watch all the games, he does none of that. He does exactly the opposite. And so what we're talking about here is after the fact, you're going to sit down and you go, wait a minute. When the next week, when he plays, when he plays Army, okay, let's say he plays Army, and Army does the same blitz, he doesn't respond that way. Why? What happened here? And so I'm not taking anything away from the young man. Look, he had a great game, good for him. But if you're cheating, straight up cheating, which that's what this is. This isn't, I know that their left cornerback has trouble covering, right? So I'm going to get my guy out there and we're going to try to get some separation. That's not what this is. This is, I know what you're in and I know what your signal is. That's cheating. And that's, that's what essentially, that's the exact same thing that the Patriots were doing or were accused of doing under Bill Belichick. They were essentially stealing defensive signs. And that's, look, guys, the NFL took a first round draft pick away from them for doing that. And my point here is that cheating? Yes. Should somebody get in trouble from that? Absolutely.
So here are the passing touchdowns from UT. I went back through my text from Sam. Here are the passing touchdowns by a UTSA quarterback against teams with a winning record. Against Texas State, 170 yards, 1 touchdown. Against Texas, 132 yards. I mean, Texas made a lot of people look bad. Against East Carolina, I think that's 286 and 1 touchdown. Against Memphis, 307 and 4 scores. Army, 207 and 1. Coastal Carolina, 256 and 1. Now, you may say, well, gosh, there were a couple other times he racked up quite a few yards. Well, but he didn't throw 4 touchdowns. And, that's just one short. No, he threw as many touchdowns in the Memphis game as he threw against the other teams with a winning record combined. Come on. Like, there's got to be something there. And again, I don't know. I mean, obviously we know the particulars. I don't know who knew what when. We're probably never going to know, Bryan. But there's too much well, they say too much smoke for there not to be a fire.
Yeah, I mean, we know what happened. I mean, at the media day, they didn't even try to deny it. Yeah, I mean, it's just it was funny because was it the before the media day, before they even got to the media day, I think Coach Traylor was at some event and was asked about Sam's article, and he called it asinine, just nonsense. But once we had that smoking gun, shout out to Sam, man, he did a great job. But once he got that smoking gun, all of a sudden it's not asinine anymore. I mean, he said he stood by his comments, but then also had to change his story up a little bit, and none of them denied it. So it is what it is. I guess just like Silverfield said, you got to move on. You can only control what you can control.
Life rolls on, and we
Yep.
wanted to take a minute here. Ask Landon to jump on, the newest member of the TSR team. Landon, welcome aboard, and see you're driving, so please be safe
Thank
while
you.
you're doing that.
I'm parked right now, so I'm
Okay,
good
good.
on the safety.
So, Landon, we're kind of going through the Memphis UTSA stuff. So, I just wanted to maybe get and see from a new member of our team. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Well, I watched the game live, and obviously, I think as most people probably relate to this, I didn't really have anything going through my head about that as I watched the game. Um, Actually, I remember that week after the game, Sam told me, about the initial tip, and we didn't really think anything of it until he started chasing the story a few weeks back. And so I guess at the time, no, I really didn't think anything was going on. But then when I actually helped him dive into the tape of that and look back at everything, and it was one of those games where UTSA, their offense, the whole game, it just seems like whatever Memphis had dialed up defensively, they had the answer for it. They just always had a guy in a spot where Memphis's defense was not. And I get there's game planning and you can watch all the tape you want and come up with the perfect plan, but it just seemed a little far fetched to me. It's not like UTSA was this great team all year. And that game, they were lights out on offense. So I think the tape definitely backs up the sourcing Sam had on that story.
Well, and I think one of the other things that I would be remiss to not mention here is you got to be good enough to execute. It don't matter if you have the game plan.
Definitely.
What was it Nick Saban said a few weeks ago or last season about paying guys $20 million, and if you're not paying the right guys $20 million, it don't mean fill in the blank. And I think that applies here. You've got to be able to execute. Look, if you gave me the game plan, Memphis is still in pretty good shape because I'm not going to be able to find enough guys to execute. But it's just a bad situation overall. It's a really bad look, I think, not only for Taj, but also the UTSA program, which has been really good since their inception. Since Larry Coker got that program off the ground. Jeff Traylor is a hell of a coach, and they've been a good program. And this kind of puts kind of a damper on that. So before we get too much further, Landon, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you came to get connected with us?
Awesome. Sounds good. So yeah, my name's Landon Speck. I'm currently a junior journalism student at the University of Memphis with a concentration in sports media. I got connected with the site through Sam Shoemaker, who I'm sure all of you know very well. I initially just contributed to the basketball podcast we did during the season with him and Devin and our buddy Noah. So that was my initial connection, and now I'm on as a staff writer. I'm looking forward to it. I was born and raised in the Memphis area, so I've been around the program, men's basketball and football mainly, for my whole life, and I've just been a huge sports fan for as long as I can remember. So yeah, I'm really pumped about it, and this is definitely what I'm looking to do long term.
Yeah, and we're really glad you're here, and really glad that you're going to help out during football season and have great basketball coverage as well. So I'll just ask you this week, because I don't know how things are going to look in 2 weeks, where everybody's going to be. But so, what are your thoughts on the upcoming season and how you see Memphis turning out?
So this is a year for Memphis. They're losing a lot of their production from last year. I'm sure everybody knows this. They're losing Hennigan. They're losing all three of the starting receivers. They're losing Mario Anderson, Anthony Lanfear. That's your core, just offensively even. I mean, I think I just actually watched an old Silverfield interview from earlier in the offseason today. He said they only brought back 3 starters from last year's team. So that's going to be the big story all season, is how it's all new faces. As, let's be real, at that level, at the group of 5 level of college football, that's just the reality of it for the most part with the way the portal is. But this is a team still, despite that, they should be in the upper echelon of the American as far as just pure talent goes. This is still a very talented football team. And with the way the conference has been just ransacked by realignment, there's no reason Memphis shouldn't be one of the top programs year in and year out. And I think I saw today, I'm just seeing a lot of talk about, people taking the over, the under on their win total, whatever it is. And just looking at the schedule, I think this should be a team that should win 9 or 10 games, in my opinion. Obviously, you got the tough one with Arkansas at home. Tulane should still be good. Navy should still be good. They're bringing back Horvath at quarterback. So it's not like it's going to be a cakewalk or anything. But to me, just as far as talent goes, they have plenty to work with compared to everyone else in the American.
Well, let's kind of move ahead to the other thing I wanted to talk about here. And Bryan, I'll let you get started with this. Is before all this happened, Memphis offered the Big 12 $200 million an out clause. And the Big 12 still said, no, we don't really think so. What was kind of the feeling around media day with that whole thing going on?
Believe it or not, I mean, from the folks that I've talked to, they're not necessarily proud of Memphis, but they're like, "Hey, you shot your shot. Kudos." They're like, if quote unquote the school I cover did that, hey, I wish they would. It shows they, the aspirations where they want to be. So yeah, for me, I'm still sort of shocked the Big 12 didn't consider it more than they did. I mean, it's really when you break it down, it's risk free for them. What do you got to lose?
Well, I think that what we saw here and is, if we're being just brutally honest here, both parties are waiting on what's going to happen with the ACC. That's what both parties honestly are waiting for.
I can understand that, but why not get the money now?
Because
you have the out of, hey, when the AAC or ACC does break up, you have that clause that you can book Memphis. Take Memphis's money and then boot them later. To me, but here, think about this. I wanted to ask Landon something, because I know the perception of Memphis football, blah, blah, blah. Landon, what's your earliest Memphis football memory of the team? What was their record?
It was the 2014 season with Fuente and Paxton when they went to the Beach Bowl. I believe they went 8-5 that year, and that was the first time I remember Memphis being anything from a football standpoint, because obviously the program was a disaster before that. Really, between D'Angelo and that team, it was nothing.
Yeah, but you don't remember those days,
yeah.
Correct?
Right. Exactly. I don't remember those at all because of that, because of how bad it was.
So we have a generation of, I'm going to say kids because you're my son's age, but we have a generation that does not remember Memphis football being a cellar dweller. If you really think about it, anyone from, I would say, how old are you, Landon? 22-ish?
I'm 20. I'm 20. I was born in 04.
So think about that. I know. Anyone that's roughly 20 to 20, let's just say 22 years or younger, they do not remember Memphis being, quote unquote, a loser. No. So, so the perception of Memphis football is just the older generation, looking back, it's like, oh, Memphis is nothing. But the younger generation, all they remember is Memphis as a winning team. When's the last? He doesn't even remember when Memphis had a losing season. That was 2013. So the perception of Memphis football to me is gone way up, and it's just the older heads that's trying to keep it down.
Well, I don't know that it's a keep it down thing. Here's my thing. I think both parties, Larry, are waiting on the Big 12 or are waiting on the ACC. They're waiting on what FSU, Clemson, UNC, you pick them, are going to do. Who knows? And the downside is, if you're Memphis, it's super high risk. The money is not that big a deal. The money is fine. The deferring TV revenue, that's fine. SMU bought their way into the ACC. But that clause that, look, if we don't add value, we can kick you out or you can kick us out. Well, that's not good for either side, because the Big 12 is not going to look good after that. And of course, Memphis is not going to look good at all after that. And there's always politics at play. You've got Kansas State, those schools, Iowa State, who's had enough, I think, of Memphis from the Liberty Bowl last 2 years ago. And I don't think anybody's holding anybody down. Man, Larry, that whole kick us out if we don't add anything, I'm sorry, that reeks of desperation. And that, I don't think that's a good look at all.
Well, as far as the desperation goes, I mean, we are desperate. Let's just say it for what it is. And we're trying not to get stuck on the wrong side of the fence. And it's important that you let people know what you're capable of. So I get where you're coming from, but it's where we're at with it. As far as them not taking it, I mean, I'm going to say it for what it is. This is, to me, this is a racial thing. I believe that with my heart. I think that that you know, cousin Joey from Nowheresville, Kansas, you know, looks at Memphis and says, "I don't want to be around
Yeah.
that
Yep.
demographic." And redneck boy in Lubbock, Texas, looks at it and says something similar.
Guns up.
Um, yeah, I mean, right? I mean, we saw Iowa right up close.
I would say, yeah.
Um, and I also think so here's a hill I will die on. I think the location of the stadium plays a role. I think that higher ups at the Big 12 look at the stadium, the location, and the demographics around it, and just say, no, we don't want any parts of that. Right or wrong? Look, we're not here. It says master of paint. Okay. I'm bringing paint. All right. I'm telling you where we're at with it. You can either deal with it or don't. But the bottom line is that the Big 12 doesn't want anything to do with Memphis, primarily because of racial reasons, in my humble opinion. And I think that's been the issue from the beginning, and it will continue to be the issue. Um, uh, but I mean, look, at some point, somebody's going to take our money. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And at some point, somebody's going to look at it and say, now, is that going to be a watered down ACC? Maybe. Is it going to be a watered down Big 12? Maybe. Is it going to be a reconstituted Pac 12, whatever that is? I don't know. But somebody is going to take your money. And I think one of the things that we as fans have to come to grips with is that the only thing we can do is go to the games and show everybody that their perception is not reality.
So, Landon, I know you've got a heart out here, but I want to kind of get your thoughts from just, kind of an outsider, I guess. But if you're the Big 12, TJ said it in the chat, why do you not even just take it to a vote? Like, are you that disinterested? Are you that turned off by Memphis that you won't even talk about it?
It's honestly, that's probably the most surprising thing to me is the fact that with this new offer, recent $200 plus million offer, they didn't even entertain it. That was the part that really stunned me. It wasn't just the fact that they turned him down. And I think I don't really have a good reason for that, to be quite honest with you. I'm not, the expert on that. I just, it's interesting when you look at the other markets, though, that they did take from the American. They took Cincinnati, they took Houston, and they took Central Florida. And I think with Central Florida and Houston, especially both of those schools, I think they have the enrollment numbers at those schools are very high. I think, and that's like the one thing where when you compare Memphis to all of these, schools in big markets, if you will, so quote unquote big markets for college schools, um, they just don't have the enrollment that those schools have. I think that could be one factor that plays into it's a much bigger thing than that, obviously. But honestly, no, I don't have a great answer for why the Big 12 wouldn't even entertain it. That kind of stunned me.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little shocked at that too, but just a couple of further points about that. Yeah, a lot of people forget, and there's always the cynic in me that says, "Well, they don't decide either. It's ESPN that decides where they want to move the pieces." But it's university presidents that decide these things, right? It's not athletic directors. It's not boosters. It's not collectives. It's not the student bodies. It is the presidents. And, they, for better or for worse, they have a perception of Memphis. And although our academic profile is millions of times better than it was, um, even Landon, at your first memory of Memphis football, the academic perception is way higher. And I get people that come back to me sometimes and say, well, they took UCF, and Orlando's not a great town, and I'm here to tell you it's not. Um, and they took Houston. Well, here's the thing. You're talking about destination cities, right? Like, that's one thing that they have going for them, or these are places people typically go. Nobody's going to Manhattan, Kansas. Nobody's going to Ames. Nobody's going to Stillwater, right? Like, nobody's going to these other places. So they took some teams that they thought were a good call. And Memphis came, I do guess I admit Memphis came with a great offer. What is it? Well, Will Wade said, the solid ass offer. Um, but they came with their best shot. But now that you didn't get it, my issue becomes, well, if you're the ACC, and let's say, well, not if, but when Florida State and Clemson leave and you want Memphis, you are now in the driver's seat. You're in a bigger negotiating position, because you're not going to, it's like when a coach gets fired and they hire a new coach, he's not going to take less money than the old guy. So now, did Memphis maybe tip their hand a little bit? I don't know. I just think this is I think Larry hit on some excellent points. I don't know that I'd even go racial. I will tell you, and people have argued with me over and over again about this, crime is a factor. It is, again, this kind of goes beyond race, but crime is a factor. And, I always say, and it drives people crazy, the perception is the reality. And the perception out there is that Memphis is a dangerous, super dangerous city. We're not a convention city. We're not a destination for things like that. So Memphis, kind of has its hand playing against it. Another thing, Memphis doesn't have their own medical school. And that's something that you should always think about with this. Like, UAB, I think, maybe Charlotte has one. I'll be honest, I don't really know. But Memphis doesn't have its own medical school, and that probably plays into it a little bit. But who knows? I worry a little bit about shooting your shot like that, because I worry about now, again, you go to the ACC, and the ACC, let's say Louisville and West Virginia do go to the Big 12, UNC, whomever go here, and the other go to the SEC. If you're Wake Forest, you're not going to take less than a $200 million with an out clause and giving up revenue for 5 years. And, that's just reality. Yeah. Well, Louisiana Monroe has a medical school too. But I do think all that kind of plays into it. But the academic perception is here versus where it was during even the Justin Fuente era. The perception is way up. We're a tier 1 Carnegie Research Institution now, and we just have a lot more going for us. Well, Landon, I know you've got a hard out here at the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and let you run. But thanks for jumping on with us for a few minutes, and we hope to have you on more often, and looking forward to your Tiger football and basketball coverage.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on. I'll see y'all later.
All right. Well, that was Landon Speck, who's the newest member of the TSR team, and looking forward to him joining us throughout the season. So, Bryan, I know we've kind of overrun you here a little bit with this, but what does Memphis do now? What is the next thing for Memphis?
In my opinion, just keep winning. Keep doing what you're doing. Prove people wrong. I think this will, and rightfully so. I think Memphis should have a chip on their shoulder more than they had before. Prove them wrong. You go out there and win the league and continue to win the league. And I think that's the knock on Summerfield. He hasn't won the league yet. I think that I honestly think that changes this year. Now, will they win the league this year? I don't know, but they will challenge for it. I do think Memphis will be in the championship game this year, and quite honestly, for the foreseeable future, because when you've been to practice, you've seen the quarterbacks. I think Lewis only has 1 year left, but Memphis finally, after many years, I've said this, no matter who the head coach was, the Memphis offense it blossoms if they have a dual threat quarterback. I mean, for the past 15 years, I mean, they have since 10 years. I mean, since Fuente, and when you have take a look at Fuente's offense, Norvell's offense, and now Silverfield with his offense that he had. How many times have we seen the quarterback have a good wide open 10, 15 yards to run, and he doesn't take it? And you see that a lot. But now I think with Brandon Lewis, when I interviewed him before the media day and during the media day, I mean, he'll tell you, he's like, his first thought is to pass it. But if there's no passing lanes available and there's a running lane, he's not going to hesitate. He's going to take off and run. And just go back and take a look at the Oregon State game against Nevada. I spoke to him in length about that. I mean, the game going into that game, the game plan wasn't for him to run over 100 yards. I think he only had 49 yards passing. It was so unbelievably low. I mean, it may not have been 49, but I mean, it was low. But he had more rushing yards than passing yards. And he said they just couldn't stop us. They couldn't stop the running back and they couldn't stop me running. So we just kept doing it. So, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that he said, we kept running the same few plays in Oregon. So it looks bad again, if you're Oregon State only running a few plays over and over and you can't stop it. But for Brendan Lewis, hey, I mean, kudos to him for seeing something that's available and taking it. And I think you're going to see that a lot this year with him. There's going to be some games where I think he's good enough for Memphis to be the type of quarterback that can take over a game. I know Silverfield and the other coaches, like they want someone who can manage the game. I feel pretty confident in all three of the quarterbacks. I know A.J. Hill's a true freshman, but even Ayrton Maiden, if you take a look at his game film from high school, he has the athletic ability to take over a game.
Let's save some of that for 2 weeks from now for our season preview. But yeah, I do think you're onto something there, Brian. I think winning, putting butts in seats, continuing to increase your endowment, continuing to grow your season ticket base. The renovated Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium does not hurt. There's a reason they're pumping so much money into that. And again, this is no offense to the fine people of the city of Charlotte, but you ain't paying what Memphis is paying to play Charlotte on a Thursday night in front of 27 people. Like that's just not the end goal for what Memphis is trying to do here. But again, we're going to see with conference realignment, it's not done. And I think Memphis is still poised to move. I don't want to get.
They're in a great spot. Memphis is in a great spot to be the best team in the group of six now.
And that is something that Justin Fuente once said that always stuck with me about conference realignment and Memphis doing this and Memphis doing that. Be the best Sprite you can be. There's value in that. You're not Coke, you're not Pepsi. So just be the best Sprite you can be. And, maybe there's some value in other than the money. And I know the money kind of rules it all, but Memphis is going to be one of the few schools to pay the house settlement. Like they're going to be one of the few group of 5 schools. And I said when this all started that location helps. And, being in a city with large corporations doesn't hurt. And having the booster organization that Memphis has doesn't hurt. So I think you are primed to either be the top of the G5 or G6, G whatever. Well, actually, if we're being real, there's 2, and then there's kind of everybody else.
Top of the G8.
Yeah, top of the G8, G9, whatever we're at this week. Because I still, and again, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I still think you're going to have a breakaway and you're going to have a super league. You're starting to kind of see the rumblings of that. They're going to take the 25 top schools, get them out of the NCAA purview, and the rest of us are fighting for scraps. But Memphis is well positioned. I'm just concerned that Memphis gave away negotiating position. That's my only concern. It's not a concern of is Memphis the next best program. because it's clearly the next best program because, everybody's slobbering over Tulane this year and they're going to go 9-3, and Boise State's not going to be as good as they were last year. They're probably, because they had a generational talent. Look at what happened with Memphis. We had a generational talent at running back, one of the best players in the country. And the next year we went, 7-5, 8-4, somewhere through there. I'm getting old, so my memory isn't as good as it used to be. Memphis kind of had a couple down years and then a couple really bad years. So will they follow that path? I think Memphis is well positioned. And even if Memphis doesn't get the quote call up to what's left of the P4, I don't think that's the end of the world, Larry. I really don't. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I've just covered some of it. But, at the end, the money would be great. Like, all kidding, the money would be fantastic. But it's got to be enough more money. That's why we didn't go to the Pac-12, right? Because the money wasn't going to be significantly more. So we just said, you know what? We'll hold. And look, there's, from a business perspective, there's still private equity money out there. There's unequal distribution that they've talked about with the American. So there's still a lot kind of left on the field, pardon the pun, Larry. And I think, 2-10 after D'Angelo. I think that's not to just be totally dismissed that if Memphis doesn't get in the ACC or Memphis doesn't get in the Big 12, that there's some sort of failure.
So this gets into a more nuanced conversation. So let's think about it like this. So I think you're right. At some point, like the 25, we've talked about how there's tiers of teams, right? And there's 25 or 30 teams probably in that very top echelon, right? We can argue about who those teams are, but I think for the most part, we know who they are. And then after that, then you've got another tier, right, of teams. And where you want to position yourself is to be there, right? You're not gonna get to that top without going through that second tier first. And so Memphis has moved themselves up. And so what you want to be, you've arguably moved yourself in there with the Boise States and these other upper tier programs of the G5, and then even they're probably equal with, well, you saw they're equal with the bottom half of what they call the P4, right? I mean, you're not significantly, you're on par with Iowa State, you're on par with West Virginia, you're on par with these other teams that generally. So that's where you want to be. And to your point, John, like, be the best Sprite you can be. And you have to, you've got the talent. You just have to be consistent. And you have to, we can't have like really down years. You have to keep building and get yourself into that next level. And look, we're not looking to be Texas because we're never going to be Texas. Like, that's just never going to happen, right? Does that mean you can't play with Texas? Absolutely. You can, you may have a year or two, but the bottom line is Memphis football is fun right now. And that's the important thing. It's fun to watch. It's got a brand. Like it's there's a lot of points. We've had a lot of really good players. How many have we got in the NFL right now? Somebody tell me. 12, 13.
12, 13, probably somewhere through there.
And that's something like, if you go back to 10 years ago, that would have been, 15 years ago, that would have been unthinkable, right? And yes, I know, Vance. That's why I mentioned them. But the point is, like, we are right where we need to be right now. To your point, John, here's the problem with moving up too fast, is that you can get you can lose traction. And we've seen that. Look at TCU.
Houston,
right?
UCF, couple 4 and 8 years.
You lose a lot of traction. And I'm not saying that we won't when we eventually move up. We will lose some traction. But you have to be ready. And we weren't, for a long time, we weren't ready. I'm not sure 100% to your point, John, that we're even ready now. The stadium is still in shambles. It will, we know a couple of years it'll be ready. But we still got some things to do, to work on. I do believe that. And to your point, 19. Okay, fine. Thank you, Jeb. But my point is, it's not the end of the world that we didn't get in the Big 12.
100%.
It's not the end of the world. But we do need at some point to separate ourselves from the bottom of our own conference and the G5.
The way I would say that is you want to be closer to Mississippi State than Charlotte.
Correct.
And I'm not trying to belittle Mississippi State or anything like that. That's not the point. But you want to be closer to Mississippi State, South Carolina, Kentucky, Houston, UCF, West Virginia, whatever. You want to be closer to those schools than you do Charlotte. No offense to our fine friends at UAB, Southern Miss, Georgia State, Troy. Like, you want to be, and you don't want to be fringy, I don't think that's really a word. Although I did learn today that irregardless is actually a word per Merriam-Webster dictionary. But you don't want to be fringy. You want to be solidly in that middle tier, because that's where, there's going to be 25 or 30 teams that break away and, form a super league or whatever they want to call it. Because here's another reality that people don't talk about, Bryan. College football is TV content. That's it. That's all it is. It is entertainment. If we haven't learned anything from realignment, from transfer portal, from NIL, college football is purely TV entertainment at this point.
It's a huge moneymaker. And I mean, I would love it. I don't think a lot of people would, but I would, if they could do the European soccer model. You can have your Super League promotion relegation. I mean, to me, oh man, I mean, because think about it. I mean, let's say, when you start, you have your power conferences. Vandy has a bad year, they get relegated, and Memphis gets promoted. And to me, that just it would take, to me, in my opinion, for that's what it would take for college football. I don't think they would overtake the NFL, but for someone like me who is not who doesn't watch NFL every single Sunday, to me, and for folks like me, it would put college football above the NFL, because to me that's more intriguing. I would watch a relegation battle college football game over a playoff NFL game, but that's just me. I know,
Yeah, you're the only one.
But see, to me,
you have a weird British accent, by the way.
Relegation talk. Good day, Governor. But to me, I love that European soccer. I'm a soccer fan.
But look, but to your point, I don't want to compare them, but a relegation game would be freaking awesome. I mean, it would do huge numbers, even if it was a lower tier school. Like you mentioned Wake Forest. Let's say it's Wake Forest versus
Iowa State.
Boston College.
Let's pick on the Eagles for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Why not? And that game is on a Monday night. It's a relegation game. I mean, it's good.
Loser to the Sun Belt.
Right. I mean, can you imagine the numbers that game will do? Like huge numbers, because everybody loves a drama. Everybody loves, drama, and that's drama to the nth. So I like the idea. It's never going to happen, by the way. This is a total pipe dream, but it would be awesome. But what you can have, okay, is you can have a game where they have to play. If they lose, they have to play in a different bracket of their own conference, right? And that to me would be interesting because, to your point, John, this is all entertainment. That's all football is. That's all basketball is. And you guys know my statement about entertainment is the very tip top is the only people that make any money in entertainment is the very tip top, right?
It's a pyramid
it's
scheme.
feudalistic. And if I'm sorry, it's not fair, but fair is what you go to in the fall and have some popcorn. Okay, this isn't fair. Life isn't fair. My point here is that when you're Memphis, you need to be entertaining, and you need to have good games. We have consistently good games. We win, and we have a brand. You have to have a brand, right? We talked about this with Josh Pastner. Like, what was he, right? Memphis has a brand. We score points. We play good defense, not fantastic defense. This isn't the Big Ten, right? You tune into Memphis to see a 44-27 game. Okay. And that's what we're known for. And that's what you got to be. And when we get on the field with a named team, we're competitive. We may not win, but we're competitive.
This is the perfect summation of what we're trying to say that Jeb said. You can make a good living only being in commercials.
Right.
Well, pardon this tangent, boy, this is getting out off the rails, but being a pro wrestling fan, there's something for everybody. And there's a style of wrestling for you, for me, that we all enjoy. And, with the rise of independent wrestling, there are guys that can work more. And, competition's good for everybody. And, here's where I think we're headed. Not only are we going to have a breakaway, but with what's left, I think that may break into two tiers in terms of a playoff. And maybe what we see, Bryan, is, let's say Memphis is number 5 of the whatever, or let's say Memphis is the 9 seed or 11 seed, whatever. Well, they're going to play one of the lower, UAB? Let's say Memphis separates itself from UAB, but now Memphis has to face a UAB type in the playoff. Maybe their 2 or 3 best teams get in that middle level playoff. And that is almost a relegation, because if you lose that game, then boy, your season really ended on a sour note. I'm not going to say UAB. Jacksonville State. I'm just going to pick on them for a second. You lose to Jacksonville State, that puts a really bad taste, and that's going to hurt season ticket sales next year, and it's going to affect the economics. But I think that's what people need to remember is really at play here. This is not about on-field product. It's just not. This is about, can you be entertaining? Do you have a brand? If Memphis goes 6-6 but scores 52 points a game and gives up 49 points a game, people are still going to tune in. And somebody said something last week, I think it was, on Twitter. I'm sorry, on X, or maybe it was YouTube. It was a response to somebody talking about the SEC and Big 12's dominance and all that. And this person basically said, look, you guys keep that and you keep arguing about all this stuff. Meanwhile, the rest of us, like Bryan said, we're going to watch Buffalo at Eastern Michigan on a Wednesday night in November, where there's a 99-yard touchdown return of a blocked extra point in a blizzard in front of 14 people. And I think, Bryan, that kind of speaks to your point that as long as it's entertaining, people are going to tune in and people are going to watch it. And that's whether Memphis is in the Big 12 or ACC or the American now, or the MAC, for crying out loud. It doesn't really, conferences, if one thing we've learned, conferences don't matter. It does not matter where you are. You're never going to be Texas. You are never going to be Alabama, Florida State, Notre Dame. You're never going to be those schools. So the challenge becomes, you want to be closer to Colorado, Houston, UCF than Troy, Louisiana Monroe, all apologies, Larry, Southern Miss, Georgia State. You don't, God, it still chaps my hide that we're going to those two schools.
I'll tell you this. there's a lot of fun to be had at a Southern Miss game. There's a lot
There
of fun.
is, and I miss playing. If we're going to play some damn lower level schools, why are we not playing Southern Miss for crying out loud?
Right. I mean, to your point, here's my point. Like there's to your point about wrestling. Like there's a lot of fun to be had at these, and they don't have to be Memphis for them to be fun, right?
Nope.
There's a lot of fun. Are they ever going to be LSU? No. Are they ever going to be, even Ole Miss? No. But there's a lot of fun to be had there, and Memphis has there's a lot of entertainment value. Memphis, by the way, Memphis is way better program, okay, than Southern Miss, which is not something that was true 20 years ago, right? But to the point, my point in all this is that, and is your point, is that you don't have to be Texas to be successful. You don't have to be Tom Cruise to be a successful actor. You don't have to be Texas to be a successful football program. And that's where, and I'm not picking on Texas. Well, you could pick any school. The point is, you have to be the best at what you can be and maximize what you have. And if we do that, we will automatically have separated ourselves from just about everyone else. Maybe Tulane, maybe. I think at some point they're going to hit a ceiling that they just can't get through, right? We've talked about this with Tulsa many times. Tulsa has a ceiling. It's there. There's just ECU has a ceiling. It's there. I think Charlotte has a ceiling. That it may, I don't know that it's where, they haven't gotten there yet, but they do. And Memphis' ceiling is higher than any of that.
Charlotte's ceiling's pretty high, but
yeah, I agree. They just haven't. They haven't even tried.
They just haven't capitalized. And again, not to beat this horse, but like where you are is going to matter in all this. Where you are physically located is going to matter, as long as you don't have a ton of what I call pull away. It's going to matter. So the question becomes: does Charlotte have more pull away from UNC and NC State than Memphis has from the 47 SEC schools that appear to be around it? So that's the ultimate question. So we're off next week. We're going to kind of regroup and get more into football mode the week after that. Coming up, let's see, today's the 5th, so that would be the 19th. And I want to say something about the Troy game. Jeb had one of the best sayings ever about the East Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina, and it applies to Troy. Nobody has ever accidentally gone to Greenville, North Carolina, or Troy, Alabama. You got a mean to go there. That's going to be a miserable trip. The best, I'll just give you, for instance, the best hotel available
if you've ever driven that.
I drove it last year. It was the stopping point on the way to Tallahassee.
Yep.
My best hotel choice was a Best Western. So that just says everything you need to say. But anyway, so we're off the 12th. We will be back the 19th. We will be here with a season preview. We're going to talk about not only Memphis. Jonah Dillon and I talked about this week. We're going to do the most asinine thing ever and predict game by game for Memphis. But we're also going to talk about the AAC at large, probably a little longer program. And then the next week, it's game week. Like, it's here. We are past, I think somebody said until February, there will be no weekend without some sort of football after last weekend, after the Hall of Fame game. So, oh man, Jeb, I don't know that I'd interrupt the trip to the beach to go to Troy, Alabama. That's a super beach. Although he's closer than we are.
No.
So anyway, don't have a big outro for this week. So sorry about the production issues tonight, but again, totally new system. Thanks to all of you for kind of sticking with us here and watching us. And like I said, we're going to take next week off, and then we will be back in 2 weeks for the season preview. For the best co-hosts in all the land, Larry Marley and Brian Moss, this is John Maddox signing off and reminding you that if you go to TigerSportsReport.com, the first week is just $1. And then we'll throw in a subscription to The Athletic with it. So just $1 for the first week. And a lot of, we had Sam's article about this whole situation was on there first before it was on our message boards before it ever got out to the public. We got training camp stuff. We've got the best news. We try to keep the best news. One of us is at practice every day that we can come. So just, join us up, and we'll, the podcast, don't worry, the podcast will always be free. No plans to put that behind a paywall anytime soon. But thanks again for watching, everybody, and we will see you in 2 weeks.